Who gave you permission to touch my son? The words sliced through the luxurious dining room like a blade, bringing all motion to an abrupt halt. Champagne flutes froze midair. Conversations dropped into stunned silence. The delicate melody of a violin, unexpected, trembling, but hauntingly clear, hung in the stillness. A ghost of a sound that refused to vanish. Asterisk, could a single moment change everything? Stay tuned to Bup Stories to find out. Asterisk. Maya Green slowly turned around, her hand still lightly hovering near the boy holding the child-sized violin. Across the opulent room of the Whitmore Private Club, Jason Whitmore stood like a statue carved from ice, rage simmering just beneath the surface. His voice, clipped and biting, had drawn every gaze in the room. "Mr. Whitmore," Maya began, but her words faltered as the boy glanced up at her, fingers still gently gripping the bow. Jason strode forward, his Italian loafers making no sound on the plush carpet. "Eli, give me the violin now." Eli didn't move. He was 11 years old, wrapped in a navy blue tuxedo, and he stood completely still, staring at Maya with an intensity that didn't match his usual distant demeanor. Everyone in the room had heard the music. It wasn't much, just a handful of tentative notes played with a bow hand that trembled ever so slightly. But there was something raw in the sound. Intentional. Asterisk, what happens when a silent boy finds his voice through music? Keep watching Bup Stories to uncover the magic. Asterisk. Jason tried again, firmer this time. "Eli, come with me. Let's go." But Eli didn't come. Instead, he lifted the violin again and looked at Maya. The way he looked at her wasn't as a stranger. It was as if she were a lighthouse and he, a ship lost at sea. Maya hesitated, then knelt gently in front of him. "It's okay," she whispered. "Would you like to play the next part?" Eli nodded. "Just once." Maya placed her fingers above her heart, then raised her hand slowly, like a conductor without a baton. The room held its breath. The boy followed her movement. The next few notes came clearer, steadier. Then again, a fragile melody began to emerge, soft, trembling, like a lullaby remembered in a dream. Gasps whispered through the room. Someone's phone camera clicked. A woman near the piano dabbed her eyes. Jason stood rigid, watching the scene unravel in front of him like a dream he hadn't authorized. This couldn't be real. Eli had never played violin in public, not even during therapy. He barely spoke. Doctors had said he wouldn't connect, wouldn't react to strangers. But here he was, not just reacting, he was responding. When the melody stumbled, Maya offered no words, only a subtle nod, her hand mimicking a gentle wave to keep the rhythm alive. It was all nonverbal, all pure instinct, and Eli followed. For nearly 45 seconds, the room belonged to them, a black waitress in a pressed uniform and a silent boy who hadn't let anyone touch his hand in years. If this moment touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button to show your support for Maya and Eli on Bup Stories. And let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching this from. You might be surprised, someone nearby could be watching with you right now. Then Jason moved. That's enough. The magic snapped. Eli lowered the violin slowly. The room exhaled. Jason stepped forward and reached for the instrument, but Eli didn't hand it to him. He placed it carefully on a velvet napkin beside Maya, as if it belonged to her now. Then, without a word, he turned and walked toward his father. Jason didn't speak another word. He looked down at Maya, his jaw tight. This won't happen again. He turned and followed Eli out of the dining room. Later that evening, Maya sat alone in the staff lounge, her uniform folded beside her, her hands trembling slightly. The echo of the melody still rang in her chest. She stared at her phone. In her gallery was a 38-second clip recorded by the assistant manager in disbelief, showing Eli playing, her hand guiding him invisibly through the air. The door creaked open. Miss Claudine, the head chef and a matriarch in her own right, walked in with a mug of chamomile tea. "I saw what you did," Claudine said, her voice a warm blend of southern drawl and quiet reverence. "Nobody's ever reached that child." Maya shook her head. "I didn't do anything. He led me." I just followed. Claudine sat beside her, nodding slowly. That's exactly why it worked. Maya swallowed hard. Do you think I overstepped? You listened, Claudine replied. And sometimes that's louder than any therapy session or price tag. Maya didn't answer. She watched the video again. The boy's eyes fixed on her. The way he matched her movements, like they were dancing without touching. It was Noah all over again, her younger brother who never spoke but hummed lullabies into her shoulder at night. He died before the world ever learned his music. This time, Maya wasn't going to let silence win. She opened her email app, typed in the address on the business card Jason Whitmore had tossed onto the bar months ago during a staff orientation. Attached the video. Subject, about Eli. Message, I didn't teach him. I just listened. She hesitated, finger hovering over send. Then she tapped. And with that single act, Maya Green unknowingly ignited a sequence of events that would change her life and Eli's forever. The following morning, the sun glared through the Manhattan skyline like an interrogator's lamp. Maya sat at the corner table of the staff cafe inside the Whitmore Private Club, nervously stirring her coffee. Her fingers hadn't stopped trembling since she hit send on that email the night before. She hadn't slept. Every word in her message to Jason Whitmore replayed like a stubborn echo. I didn't teach him. I just listened. Now she sat, bracing herself for consequences. Maya Green. A sharp voice called from the hallway. She turned. The club's general manager, Mr. Carver, loomed in the doorway with a rigid expression, the kind that announced you were about to be disciplined, or worse. Yes, sir, she said, rising quickly. Mr. Whitmore wants to see you. Now. The walk down the corridor was longer than usual. Each footstep bounced louder against the marble floors, the air thick with judgment. She caught glimpses of other staff whispering as she passed, eyes darting away when she looked back. Mr. Carver led her to the penthouse-level boardroom, a space rarely used except for press events and shareholder summits. She was not a shareholder. Not even close. The door opened. Jason Whitmore stood alone inside, wearing a gray tailored suit, no tie. His sleeves were rolled to the elbows, which would have made him seem approachable if not for the ice in his eyes. Sit. Maya obeyed. Jason didn't speak at first. Instead, he tapped a remote, and a projection screen slid down. The 38-second video of Eli playing the violin began to play. Maya tried not to squirm. He watched it in full silence, arms crossed. When the screen faded to black, he turned slowly to face her. You crossed a line, Miss Green. She inhaled, kept her voice steady. I understand, sir, but You were hired to serve wine and clear dishes, not insert yourself into my son's psychological development. Maya's jaw tensed. She forced herself to respond with calm. I didn't intend to interfere. I found him with the violin. He reached for me. I didn't lead him. He led me. Jason studied her, eyes narrowing. You know what he's been through. Therapists, behavioral specialists, language coaches, and not once has he responded. Yet somehow you. He stopped, grinding the last word under his breath like it burned his tongue. Maya glanced at the screen. You saw the video. That wasn't me performing. That was Eli. Jason's shoulders tightened. My son is not a spectacle. I know that, she replied softly. He's a musician. Jason said nothing. The silence grew heavy. Then he sat down across from her, folding his hands. His tone shifted, cool, but less biting. I won't fire you. Not yet. But from now on, you stay away from him. You will not engage, speak, or acknowledge Eli without explicit permission. Are we clear? Maya hesitated. The answer was supposed to be yes. That would have kept her job, ended the discussion, saved her dignity. But instead, she said, no, sir. That's not clear at all. Jason blinked, visibly startled. Maya swallowed her fear. He needs connection, not avoidance. You've built walls around him so high, he's forgotten what it feels like to be seen. I didn't break your rules to disrespect you. I broke them because your son asked me to. Jason stood abruptly. This meeting is over. She rose too. You're not angry because I crossed a line. You're angry because for a moment, he didn't need you. Jason's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He gestured toward the door. Maya walked out, heart pounding, unsure if she just committed career suicide or planted the first seed of change. Downstairs, the tension continued to ripple. In the kitchen, whispers buzzed like static. You okay? Miss Claudine asked, hands dusted with flour as she kneaded dough for morning pastries. Maya leaned against the counter. I should have kept quiet. Claudine chuckled, shaking her head. If everyone kept quiet, children like Eli would stay trapped forever. Maya stared at the rising dough. I think I hit a nerve. You did more than that, Claudine said, sliding a tray into the oven. You reminded that man his son is still in there, somewhere. That night, Jason sat alone in his office. He poured a glass of bourbon but didn't drink it. The video replayed again on his phone. Eli's eyes, the way he looked at Maya. He hadn't seen that kind of focus in his son since Caroline died. His late wife had been the only one who could reach Eli through music, always music. Jason had tried to honor that legacy by keeping everything clinical, professional, managed. And yet, here was a waitress who undid all that in a minute of silent guidance. His phone vibrated. A message from his sister, Rachel, saw the video. That woman's got something real. Maybe let it breathe a little, He stared at the message, then at the unopened bourbon. Slowly, he set both aside. The next morning, he instructed Carver to leave Maya Green where she is for now. But he didn't say why. Maya returned to her routine. She poured coffee, refilled water glasses, cleared plates, but every time she passed a corridor where she once saw Eli, her heart ached. He was nowhere to be seen. Then, 4 days later, she entered the storage pantry, and there he was. Eli, sitting on a milk crate, violin case opened beside him. He looked up, didn't smile, just waited. Maya crouched to his level, eyes wide. Did someone bring you here? He shook his head. Are you allowed? He didn't answer. Instead, he lifted the bow and held it out to her. She hesitated, heart pounding. We might get in trouble. Eli placed the violin under his chin. He didn't speak. He played 2 notes, then another. Maya slowly raised her hand. And once again, they moved together, 2 souls without words, building a bridge no doctor could prescribe. Outside the pantry, Jason watched, unseen, through a cracked door. He said nothing. But this time, he didn't stop them. The pantry was still dim, but the silence inside it was richer now, fuller, filled with unspoken emotion hanging in the air like incense. Eli played slowly, cautiously, as if each note needed permission to exist. Maya stood beside him, her fingers curled gently into a guiding rhythm, invisible yet deeply felt. He finished the phrase, just 6 notes, and looked up. His face remained unreadable, but his eyes, for a fleeting second, held something shimmering. Pride. You remember the whole melody? Maya asked softly. Eli didn't speak. Instead, he opened the violin case and gently pointed to a folded piece of paper beneath the rosin. Maya took it out. It was sheet music, crumpled, smudged, handwritten by someone with a gentle, fluid script. Jason's late wife. Maya recognized the tune, a lullaby. It was the same one her brother used to hum at night when the lights were too bright, when the city outside their bedroom window made too much noise. She sat back on her heels and blinked hard. My brother used to hum that, too, she whispered. Eli turned to her, then really turned, as if the mention of another child who shared his language made the space between them a little smaller. She wanted to stay there for hours, just them, the music, and the old pantry that now felt like a chapel. But footsteps echoed down the hall. Maya looked at the door, panic rising. Eli, she snapped the violin case shut. The door opened. Jason stood there. Maya stood quickly. I didn't bring him here, I swear. Jason raised a hand, not to silence her, but as a rare gesture of understanding. I know, he said. She paused, caught off guard by his tone. He looked down at his son, who stared back, unflinching. I told Carver to check the cameras. I saw him sneak in here on his own, Jason said. Then he looked at Maya. But I also saw you didn't stop him. Maya nodded. Because it would have hurt more than helped. Jason looked at his son. Eli, buddy, did you want to play with Maya? A moment. Then a small nod. Jason turned to Maya. So, what now? I don't know, Maya said honestly. But I think shutting him down again would be the worst choice. Jason exhaled and leaned against the doorframe, the weight of years etched in his face. Do you know how many specialists I've hired? How many plans, schedules? None of them made him nod. Not once. Maya lowered her voice. Maybe the only plan he needs is someone who doesn't treat him like a puzzle. Jason rubbed his temple. I don't like things I can't control. I don't think he's asking you to control him, Maya replied. I think he just wants to be heard. A long silence followed. Then Jason straightened and addressed her directly. I want you to keep working here, but also with him. Maya blinked. You're asking me to work with your son? I'm asking you not to quit, Jason said. Because I think he's already chosen you. That evening, Claudine found Maya leaning against the prep counter, staring at her hands like they held answers. Well, the chef said, hands on hips. You've gone and softened the man of marble. Maya chuckled. It's not like he hugged me or anything, but he didn't fire me. That's practically affection for a Whitmore. Maya picked at a corner of her apron. I told him about Noah today, my brother. Claudine paused her rolling pin. That's a piece of your soul. You sure? I didn't mean to, but it came out. The way Eli played that melody was exactly how Noah did it. Soft, like he was afraid the song would run away. Claudine gave her a long, warm look. Maybe that's how music works. Finds broken places and pours itself in. Maya smiled faintly. I think I'm starting to believe that. Over the next week, Maya and Eli found moments together, quiet ones, never planned. Sometimes in the garden terrace, sometimes beside the grand piano in the lounge. No one made a schedule. No one gave orders. It was always Eli who initiated it. Sometimes he'd bring a new piece of sheet music. Other times, he'd simply nod toward her and place the violin in her hands, waiting for her to raise her palm like a metronome. Jason watched from a distance. He didn't interfere, didn't offer suggestions, but his eyes followed their movements closely, especially when Eli started holding notes longer, matching rhythm better, even closing his eyes while he played. He's not just playing anymore, Maya told him one afternoon. He's remembering. Remembering what? Caroline, she said gently. The way she played for him. I think it's all still there, locked inside. Jason looked away for a moment. I haven't heard that name in a while. She's in the music, Maya said. Maybe that's why he trusts me. Because I don't talk about her. I just let her melody speak. Jason turned to her, his voice quieter now. Did your brother play too? Noah? He couldn't read music, but he had a rhythm all his own. When the world got too loud, he'd hum into my shoulder. Always the same tune. Is he gone? Years now. Jason nodded, lips tight. I'm sorry. Maya's voice was steady. Me too. That's why I stayed when Eli played. I heard something I haven't heard in a long time. Jason looked at her, then at his son, who sat at the piano bench, trying to place his fingers correctly. Then stay, he said. She smiled. And when Eli looked back at them and grinned, just barely, just for a second, they both knew a door had opened. And no one was closing it this time. Asterisk, how far will Eli's music take him? Stay with Bup Stories to see this incredible journey unfold. Asterisk. It started with a whisper in the hallway. Did you hear about Eli Whitmore? He's a prodigy, right? Played a whole piece last week with that server girl. Not just a server, she's some kind of miracle worker. Maya could feel the shift long before anyone said it aloud. The silence that once cloaked Eli like a protective shell was cracking. Whispers replaced distance. Staff smiled more. Even the heavy air in the Whitmore Club seemed lighter somehow, like it too had been holding its breath for years. But with attention came a new kind of pressure. It began with Jason. He wasn't trying to exploit it, at least not intentionally. But when a board member caught wind of the video, sent to him by his own assistant, the enthusiasm ignited like dry kindling. Jason, the man had said in a late-night Zoom call. Do you know what this could mean? If Eli's developing like this, and under our roof, it's a PR dream. Jason had stared at the screen, face unreadable. He's not a marketing campaign. Of course not. But come on, Whitmore, this is the human story your company's been missing. Jason ended the call without another word. The next day, he watched from a distance as Eli sat beside Maya in the music room, formerly an unused parlor, now converted just for them. Eli played a new piece, a simple folk tune, while Maya tapped her fingers gently on the armrest, guiding him without words. Jason waited until the boy finished. Eli, he said gently, how would you feel about playing this at the spring gala next month? Maya froze. She didn't look up, but she could feel Eli's small frame tense beside her. I mean, Jason continued, trying to sound casual, just a short piece, nothing big, but people would love it. Eli stared at the floor. Maya finally raised her head. Can we talk privately? Jason hesitated, then nodded and followed her into the hallway. The moment the door shut, Maya turned. Don't do that to him. I was just. No, she said firmly. You were presenting a choice that wasn't really a choice. You saw his face. That wasn't interest. That was fear. Jason rubbed his eyes. He's come so far, Maya. Isn't this a chance for him to show it? Maybe, but not like that. Not when the pressure comes first. Jason's voice dropped. You think I want to exploit him? I think you're terrified of losing this progress, she replied gently. And I understand, but pushing him into the spotlight isn't protecting him. It's placing him back in a cage, just a shinier one. Jason looked away, jaw tightening. Maya stepped closer. Don't call him special if what you really mean is useful. Those words hit deep. Jason flinched like she'd struck something raw. You know what they called him after Caroline died, he said quietly. A regression case. Like he had failed. Like our loss canceled his humanity. Maya's voice softened. Then let's not prove them right. Jason nodded slowly. No spring gala. Not unless he asks. Thank you. They returned to the room. Eli looked up, wary. Maya knelt beside him. No performances, no big crowds, she told him. Just music, if you want it. He stared at her, then slowly touched her wrist. A small gesture, but one that said everything. Later that evening, Maya stood at the edge of the rooftop garden, watching the city glow beneath a navy blue sky. The breeze carried the faint sounds of traffic and music from the streets below. Claudine appeared with 2 mugs of mint tea. Heard about the gala idea, she said, handing one to Maya. News travels fast. Claudine sipped. Jason means well. He just forgets that music isn't measured in applause. System, Maya nodded. Eli doesn't need a stage. He needs a sanctuary. You've given him that, Claudine said. He claimed it. I just kept the door open. They sat in silence for a moment. You know what my father used to say? Claudine asked. The hardest thing about loving someone is letting their song come out in their own key. Maya smiled. That's beautiful. Old man was full of phrases. Most didn't make sense, but that one stuck. Maya looked down at her tea. Eli's playing a little freer now, not just following me. He's starting to improvise. Claudine chuckled. That's when you know he's healing. When he plays notes no one taught him. 2 days later, Maya found a folded piece of paper on the piano bench. Eli's handwriting, uneven but careful. Can I show you something I made? When she turned around, he was holding his violin. She nodded, and he began to play. The notes weren't from any familiar song. They were new, hesitant, but distinct, like words spoken for the first time. His bow trembled, but his eyes stayed on hers. It wasn't perfect, but it was his. When he finished, Maya clapped softly, sincerely. That was yours, wasn't it? He nodded. I'd be honored to learn it. Eli looked down, then back up. Okay. It was the first word he'd spoken to her since the day they met. Not whispered, not mouthed, spoken. Maya felt tears sting her eyes, but she blinked them away. Then let's play it again, she said, raising her hand in their now familiar silent rhythm. And together they began again. But this time, it wasn't her leading him. It was Eli leading the way. Asterisk, what's next for Eli and Maya? Don't miss the next part of their journey on Bup Stories, asterisk. The first time Eli said her name, it happened so quietly, Maya thought she'd imagined it. They were in the garden room, surrounded by windows painted with morning light. Maya was showing him how to breathe through a long note, using the rise and fall of her hand as a guide. Eli had his violin tucked gently beneath his chin, his bow poised. His eyes were fixed on hers, alert, waiting. She nodded once. Ready? He took a shallow breath, adjusted the bow. Maya, he said. Just that, soft as a sigh, shaped like a prayer. She froze. Her heart skipped. She wasn't sure whether to smile or cry. Instead, she simply replied, Yes, Eli. He smiled wide, full. The kind of smile that carried all the years of silence he'd endured, cracked open like sunlight through a locked door. Jason walked in moments later with his phone in hand, already halfway through an apology about interrupting their practice when he saw their faces. Maya was still stunned. Eli beamed. What happened? Jason asked. Your son just spoke, she said, barely above a whisper. He said my name. Jason's grip on the phone loosened. Are you sure? Clear as day, she replied. Jason, he knows me. Jason stepped closer, kneeling beside Eli. Hey, buddy, can you say it again? Eli turned to him, shy now. He tucked his chin lower, suddenly more boy than miracle. Jason didn't push. He simply reached out and held his son's hand. No need. I heard it in your eyes. Later that afternoon, Maya sat on a bench outside the staff entrance, the city bustling a few stories below. She called her mother, something she hadn't done in weeks. The phone rang twice before her mom answered. Baby girl, everything all right? I think, Maya said, her voice trembling. I think I found someone who reminds me of Noah. There was a long pause. Oh, honey, her mother said softly. Is that good or bad? Both, but mostly good. Meanwhile, Jason was facing his own internal tremors. Sitting at his desk, he stared at his wife's old journal, which he hadn't touched in over a year. Caroline's penmanship danced across the pages, full of music notes, poems, and fragments of lullabies. There were sketches of Eli as a toddler, holding a toy violin. At the top of one page, she'd written, Music will find him when words can't. Jason leaned back in his chair, swallowing the lump in his throat. That phrase had once been a comfort, but now it felt like prophecy. He picked up the phone. Rachel, he said when his sister answered. What do you know about private recitals? 2 days later, Maya was called into Jason's office again. This time, the air was less tense, more collaborative. He gestured for her to sit, and she did. I've been thinking, Jason began, about what you said. No pressure, no public showcases. Maya nodded, unsure where this was going. But what if, instead of something public, we do something private for Eli? A few familiar faces, safe environment, something small? She considered. If Eli agrees to it, yes. But only if he leads the way. I'd never force him, Jason said. And for once, Maya believed it completely. They called it the Room of Light. A quiet recital planned for 10 people, Jason's sister Rachel, Miss Claudine, 2 therapists, and a few of Maya's close friends from her neighborhood who worked in special education. Jason didn't send invitations. He sent handwritten notes. When Maya told Eli, she framed it like a game. You remember that tune you made? The one you played for me? He nodded. What if we share it with some friends? People who care about you. No stage, no cameras, just chairs and music. Eli thought for a long moment. Then he placed the violin in her hands. Okay. The day of the recital, Maya helped Eli into a soft gray vest, one size too big, which made him look like he'd borrowed a grown man's jacket. His hair was combed gently to one side. He looked both fragile and brave. Jason stood near the back of the lounge, dressed down, no jacket, no watch, just a father. The lights were dimmed. The guests sat in a half circle. No stage, just chairs. Eli stepped into the room, violin in hand, and paused. Everyone waited. He looked to Maya. She raised her hand, palm open. He nodded. Then he played. It was the same melody he had created in the garden, but now it bloomed. He held each note with intention, his bow steadier than ever before. The song felt like a conversation, a story told not with words, but with the weight of all he'd kept inside. No one moved. No one blinked. When he finished, he didn't bow. He simply looked at Maya, then Jason, then walked over and sat beside her again. The applause didn't erupt. It trickled, gentle, reverent. Jason approached, knelt before his son, and whispered, "You were perfect." Eli touched his shoulder. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he spoke. "My mom liked that song." The room fell silent again. Jason's eyes filled. He reached for his son's hand and kissed it. Yes, she did. After the guests had gone, after the chairs were stacked and the lights returned to full brightness, Maya sat beside Jason while Eli slept, curled on the couch. Jason turned to her. "I think we're witnessing something holy." Maya nodded. "And it's just the beginning." Want to know what's next for Eli's music and Maya's journey? Hit that subscribe button on Bup Stories to follow their story. The morning after the recital, Maya arrived at the Whitmore Club earlier than usual. The sun hadn't yet fully stretched its arms across the skyline, and the city's usual roar was reduced to a soft hum. She walked the corridors with slow, quiet steps, still holding on to the residue of the night before, the music, Eli's voice, the raw purity of that shared moment. In the music lounge, she found Eli already there, curled up in the same chair where he'd sat post-performance. He wasn't asleep. His eyes were open, distant, but peaceful. "Morning, Starshine," Maya said softly, the name she'd given him weeks ago during one of their first silent exchanges. Eli didn't speak, but his mouth curved upward just slightly, a smile only she would have noticed. She sat beside him. "That was brave, what you did last night. Really brave." He didn't reply, but he opened the violin case sitting at his feet and handed her the bow. Not as an offering, but a gesture, an invitation. Maya took it. "You want to play again?" He nodded. They didn't rehearse. They didn't plan. The music simply came, slower, softer, like the world had been reduced to that one quiet room in their shared breath. For a full 10 minutes, nothing existed outside of it. But the spell didn't last. At precisely 9 a.m., the door opened. Jason stood there, not alone. Behind him was a man in a slim black suit, carrying a silver tablet and a briefcase. His eyes darted around the room, scanning every detail like a developer appraising a new property. "Am I interrupting?" Jason asked carefully. Maya lowered her hand, and Eli clutched the violin a little closer. "No," she said, standing. "But you're not alone." Jason cleared his throat. "This is Andrew Polk. PR strategy, media consultation, part of the Whitmore Foundation." Andrew extended a hand toward her. "You must be the famous Miss Green." She hesitated but shook his hand. "I'm just Maya." "Well, Maya," he said, smiling too widely, "the Foundation's been following some of the developments with Mr. Eli Whitmore, and we'd love to help amplify this beautiful story." Jason stepped in, sensing the shift in Maya's posture. "It's just exploratory. No commitments. I promise." Andrew clicked on his tablet. Images of Eli performing, screenshots from phone videos guests had taken at the recital, flickered across the screen. The headlines drafted beside them made Maya's stomach turn, *, the silent sonata. Billionaire's son finds his voice. From trauma to triumph. How music saved Eli Whitmore. Black waitress inspires heir to Whitmore empire *. She drew in a slow breath. These aren't stories. They're marketing spins. Andrew didn't flinch. That's how public awareness works. This could fund music therapy programs, drive investment into special education, and humanize the Whitmore brand in a way money can't buy. Eli tugged at her sleeve. "Not now, sweetheart," she whispered, eyes locked on Jason. He looked tired, torn. He didn't disagree with her, but she could tell he was tempted by the idea of doing something good with this story, something lasting. "Jason," she said quietly, "people will want a piece of him, of you, of this. But if you give it to them now, you'll never get it back." He closed his eyes. Eli tapped the floor with his shoe, a habit he developed when he felt anxious. Maya knelt in front of him. "Hey," she said softly. "Are you okay?" Eli pointed to the tablet, then to his chest. Then, in a voice no louder than a page turning, he said, "Mine." Jason knelt beside them. "What did he say?" "He said, it's his," Maya replied. Jason looked at his son. "You're right, bud. It is." He stood up and faced Andrew. "We're not doing this." Andrew blinked. "Jason, come on. Think about the potential." "I am," Jason said firmly. "And I'm thinking about my son, not the foundation, not the optics, not the quarterly donors." Andrew packed his things in tight, mechanical motions. "Of course. I'll update the board." As the door shut behind him, Maya exhaled. Jason turned to her. "Was that the right call?" She smiled, proud. "That was the only call." Later that day, Maya and Claudine sat together in the staff kitchen, sipping iced tea from mason jars. "So, let me get this straight," Claudine said. "You shut down a media exec with nothing but a look?" Words were used, Maya grinned. "But yeah, pretty much." Claudine chuckled. "Girl, you're officially dangerous." "I just did what any decent person would do." "No," Claudine said, serious now. "You did what a mother would do." Maya looked down. The word hung in the air like something too sacred to touch. "I'm not his mother." "You're the first person who's truly seen him. That counts for something." Outside, Eli played alone on the garden bench, sunlight dancing across his bow. That night, Maya found an envelope tucked under her door at home. Handwritten, no return address. Inside was a note in Jason's handwriting. "I don't know what we're building yet, but thank you for teaching me how to start." Beneath the note was a photo printed, not digital, from the recital. Eli mid-bow stroke, Maya behind him, hand raised. Both of their faces lit from within. She pressed the photo to her chest and closed her eyes. It was real. All of it. And it was only the beginning. Evenings in Manhattan carry a hush between the rush of day and the roar of nightlife. It was in that stillness, the twilight glow filtering through high-rise windows, that something quietly shifted. Not loud, not public, but unmistakable. Maya stood at the south terrace of the Whitmore Club, watching Eli practice his new piece. It was fully his own composition, now uncertain, emotional, imperfect. She felt, bone deep, how much courage it took. Jason approached, hands in pockets, eyes soft. He's found rhythm in uncertainty, Maya said. He's writing his own voice. Jason nodded. I've seen therapists use guided visuals, doctors insist on repetition, but none of them honored the space between notes the way you do. They watched as Eli paused, dropped his bow, and glanced between the city skyline and his violin case. Then he approached Maya and laid down his bow gently at her feet. He didn't speak, but his eyes begged her to return it. She picked it up and noticed something new, tiny scuff marks and a shallow scratch along the wood. He'd played at home. He'd practiced hard. His investment surfaced in that imperfection. Maya held it out to him. Play when you feel ready. He nodded, retook the bow, and resumed. But now his notes changed. There was a strength, a boldness, a willingness to embrace risk. The melody soared into unexpected intervals, dissonance becoming character, pauses becoming punctuation, mistakes becoming punctuation marks of his truth. As the glow turned to dusk, the city lights below sparkled like a distant applause, and Maya felt it. His silence had become sound. Asterisk, how will Eli's newfound voice shape his future? Keep following Bup Stories to find out, asterisk. For weeks, word of Eli's quiet breakthroughs traveled quietly through the club staff. Not whispers about performances, but admiration of his resilience. Balthazar, the concierge, praised how the foam muster at 8 p.m. ended with Maya's boy as his call sign. Miss Claudine's baked lemon squares appeared more frequently, her way of celebrating little progressions. Meanwhile, a fundraiser event for pediatric therapy programs approached. Jason's foundation had agreed to sponsor. Traditionally, these events featured lantern releases, celebrity speakers, chrome car sponsors. This time, Jason insisted on something different, an intimate showcase, not on a stage, but in the garden lounge, where guests could experience a sort of music meditation, a space where notes spoke louder than speeches. Maya and Eli agreed, but only if he dictated the pace. Rehearsals started at twilight. She tuned his violin. He adjusted his chin rest. Their ritual settled like a sacred act. The piece Eli wrote took shape. Sometimes he added flourishes. Sometimes he discarded entire lines. Sometimes he played nothing, and Maya just followed. She offered no coaching unless he asked, just silent company and belief. At the end of one rehearsal, Eli slipped his fingers into Maya's palm and whispered, "Thank you." His voice cracked, almost lost. Maya's heart broke and mended at once. On event night, the room glowed in soft candlelight. Chairs arranged in a semicircle. 10 guests sat with closed eyes. No announcements, no fanfare. Eli stood in front of them, took one deep breath, and played. What poured out was intimacy turned melody, winding, jagged, tender. Each phrase was a sentence in a conversation unspoken. At times, it wavered, at times, it soared. It didn't sound like rehearsal. It sounded like confession. At the end, instead of applause, each guest bowed their head. Some exhaled, some wiped tears. No one spoke. Jason looked toward Maya, who stood beside Eli. He saw her bow her head as well. In that silence, he heard everything: fatherhood, regret, hope, resilience, all in the same breath. After the event, Jason walked over to the guests, offering his quiet gratitude. He turned to Maya and whispered across the lingering hush, He's mine. Thank you for keeping his song alive." Maya squeezed his hand. Backstage, Eli slung the violin case across his shoulder. He didn't say goodbye. He simply approached Maya and leaned his head on her shoulder. No words, but full presence. In that lull, Jason cleared his throat. "You know," he said, "people will ask how we did it, how we spoke. But really, we didn't do anything." "He did." Maya smiled. "He did." Later, Maya walked home beneath a moonlit sky. She passed a mural painted on a brick wall, an image of a young musician reaching toward the stars. She paused. How fitting, she thought, that even in the city of noise, silence can carry a song. At her apartment door, she found a scrolled note taped beside the handle, "For everything you've done, from both of us." Inside was a hand-bound sketchbook filled with simple drawings, a violin bow, a skyline, single musical notes. Each page labeled "Eli remembers." On the final page, "This is only chapter 1. Maya closed her eyes, pressing the book to her chest. She thought of Noah. She thought of Eli. She thought of every unsaid note waiting to find its voice. She realized this was just the beginning. What's the next chapter for Maya and Eli? Subscribe to Bup Stories to witness their journey. The days that followed the music meditation event took on a rhythm of their own, not urgent, not rushed, just quiet motion. Eli still practiced, but now on his own terms. He'd disappear for hours into corners of the club, returning with melodies half-written or tiny scrap papers filled with musical scribbles. Maya would always find him, eventually, never chasing, only following the trail of notes left like breadcrumbs. One morning, while refilling the pastry display in the staff kitchen, Maya heard her name called, not by a coworker, but by Jason's voice over the club's intercom. "Maya, can you come to the boardroom? Bring your coffee." She smirked. Bring your coffee, what kind of meeting was this? When she arrived, Jason stood by the long glass window overlooking the city, his arms crossed, brow furrowed. "There's something you should see," he said, nodding to a monitor. On the screen was an email thread from the Whitmore Foundation's education partners. One line caught her attention: multiple national organizations have requested Eli's involvement in a documentary about childhood resilience and neurodiversity. Maya felt her spine stiffen. "He doesn't know yet, does he?" Jason shook his head. "No. And I haven't responded." She exhaled. "Good. Because this isn't about resilience, it's about exposure." "I agree," he said. "But I'd be lying if I said part of me isn't tempted. I look at him now, and I wonder what else might unlock if he saw himself being celebrated." Maya leaned on the back of a leather chair. "Celebrated is different from displayed. He's just begun to speak for himself. Do we really want to hand the mic to someone else so soon?" Jason studied her, then gave a slow nod. "So, we say no." "We say not yet," she clarified. "When it's his idea, not theirs." Just then, Eli poked his head into the room. Jason quickly minimized the screen. "Hey, buddy," Jason said. "We were just talking about you." Eli entered, violin case slung over one shoulder, sketchbook tucked under the other. He walked directly to Maya and opened the book to a fresh drawing, a small paper boat floating in a puddle, music notes in the sky above it. "What's this?" Maya asked, crouching to his level. Eli pointed to the boat, then whispered, "My music." She smiled. "Going somewhere?" He shrugged, then pointed to the next page, a violin resting on a park bench, unattended. Maya looked at Jason. "He's ready for something. I don't know what yet, but he's thinking bigger." Jason nodded slowly. "I have an idea." 2 days later, Maya and Eli stood at the edge of Central Park. Jason had reserved a quiet corner of the lawn for something private, a gift. A chance for Eli to play in nature, for no one in particular, without pressure or stage. A small circle of friends from the club showed up: Claudine, Balthazar, a few others. They sat on picnic blankets and sipped lemonade from mason jars. No press, no announcements, just a little afternoon peace. Eli walked to the center of the grass and opened his case. He didn't look at anyone. He simply lifted the violin, placed it beneath his chin, and began. The park faded. The honking cars and distant chatter dulled. All that remained was his music, fragile and deliberate. A tune no one recognized, but everyone felt. Children nearby stopped running. Old couples walking by paused mid-step. Even a nearby street performer lowered his saxophone. When he finished, Eli didn't bow. He just looked up at the trees, then at Maya, and smiled. Jason approached slowly. "You want to come sit with us, bud?" Eli hesitated, then ran forward, crashing into Jason's arms with surprising force. Jason froze, then wrapped both arms around his son. It was the first time Eli had initiated contact. Maya felt her throat tighten. Claudine beside her whispered, "I think he's finally safe." That night, as they walked back to the club, Jason kept a hand lightly on Eli's shoulder. They passed a mural that Maya hadn't seen before, an abstract swirl of color, music notes hidden like constellations. Eli stopped and traced one with his finger. "Can we paint one, too?" he asked. Jason raised an eyebrow. "A mural?" Eli nodded. "Our music." Jason turned to Maya. "You up for a little public art project?" She grinned. "Always." Over the next week, the club's garden wall, blank and unused, transformed under the guidance of a local artist friend of Maya's. Eli helped create a mural that told his story without a single word. Violin bows curled like vines, notes danced across shades of blue and silver. A small paper boat floated in a painted sky, music drifting above it. Members of the club paused to watch the progress. Some asked questions, some just nodded in understanding. Eli painted daily, sometimes with a brush, sometimes with his fingers. One afternoon, a club guest, a retired music teacher, watched quietly, then approached Maya. "He's not just healing," the woman said. "He's teaching us how to listen." Maya nodded. "He always has been. We just weren't quiet enough to hear." When the mural was completed, a small plaque was placed at its base, "To those who speak without words, may your music always find light." Eli stood beside it, running his fingers across the paint, a smear of blue still on his cheek. Jason wrapped an arm around his son. "What do you think, champ?" Eli grinned. "It's ours." And Maya, standing a few steps back, realized what they had created wasn't just art. It was legacy. Asterisk, how will this legacy grow? Don't miss the next chapter on Bup Stories, asterisk. The mural became more than a wall of color. It became a place people visited in silence, like a living prayer. Club members brought their coffee out to sit beside it. Children sketched it. Staff members walked slower near that side of the garden, some tracing the edges of the painted music notes with their fingertips, as if the colors carried warmth. Eli noticed but never drew attention to it. He only returned to the wall when no one was watching, usually in the early morning when the dew hadn't yet burned off the grass. Sometimes he would bring his sketchbook, other times his violin. One morning, Maya arrived earlier than usual and found a sealed envelope tucked into the crevice of the painted boat. Her name was written on the front in Eli's now recognizable, shaky handwriting. She opened it slowly, careful not to tear the paper. Inside was a letter, short, uneven, misspelled in places, but unmistakably his, asterisk Maya, thank you for being my song when I had none. For not being afraid of my quiet, for helping me play. I think my mom would like you. I hope you stay. Eli, asterisk. Maya pressed the letter to her heart. Her breath caught. It was the kind of moment that held no performance, no applause, only truth. She sat down beside the mural, folded the letter back into the envelope, and whispered, I'm not going anywhere. That afternoon, Jason invited Maya to his office, not the formal boardroom, but the smaller space he'd started using for private meetings. A framed photo of Caroline and Eli sat on the shelf. There were hand-drawn pictures pinned beside business degrees and investment accolades. I got a message this morning, Jason said, pushing his coffee aside, from the National Music Institute. They want to nominate Eli for their Emerging Voices honor. No press, no performance, just a small recognition ceremony for kids breaking new ground in music therapy. Maya raised an eyebrow. I haven't told him, Jason said, because this time, I don't want to decide anything for him. Maya smiled. That's progress. Jason looked at her, a weight behind his eyes. There's more. They also asked about you. They know you're not formally trained as a therapist, but they've offered to fund a certification program. Full ride, if you want it. The room was quiet. Maya felt her heart stumble. You think I should? I think, Jason said, you already are. But if a paper helps you reach more kids like Eli, then yes, I think you should. Maya nodded slowly. Let me talk to him first. Summer light filtered through wide windows, painting golden stripes across the hardwood floor of the small recital hall. Eli sat in his chair, violin in hand, sketchbook resting at his side. He drew deep breaths, eyes shut, clearly preparing for something meaningful but intangible. Today was the National Music Institute event, a modest ceremony celebrating his nomination, a seeking of validation he hadn't asked for. Maya stood beside him, offering silent support. Jason remained a few feet back, unrolling his tie with calm hands. Neither wore nervousness, just pride tempered by caution. The room filled with warm applause as Eli was introduced. Guests included educators, a few family friends, therapists he'd once resisted but gradually trusted. Jason stood near the back, heart pounding slower than usual. Maya's presence at Eli's side seemed to steady both of them. When Eli stepped forward to play, he wasn't on a raised stage, just the same floor as everyone else. The same breathing air. No lights, no meters, only attention. He began with the melody he'd composed, soft, deliberate, then shifted into something new. Unexpected harmonies that sang of grief and of hope. Choruses that seemed to fold into themselves, capturing the loneliness of silence and the thrill of finding voice. The notes grew richer, sturdier. Eyes glistened, hands clasped over mouths. Some bowed their heads in reverence. At the end, Eli didn't look up. Instead, he carefully packed his violin and stepped gracefully back behind Maya. They both waited, separated only by space, but united in purpose. When applause finally rose, it was gentle and collective. No cheers, no demands, just respect. A woman, Dr. Harper, a renowned researcher in neurodiversity and music therapy, approached them afterward. She brought a folder with programs and outreach ideas. "He's extraordinary," she said, voice hushed. "Would you consider mentoring him? National Youth Orchestra's therapy research tapes. I'd like to help compile his journey into a guide." Maya looked toward Eli. He shrugged shyly. Jason replied quietly but firmly, "Only if Eli wants to, every step of the way." Dr. Harper nodded. "Of course." Back inside the club, the mural loomed through a window by the lounge. Its colors seemed more vivid, more alive. September, rebuking any notion of stillness. Maya waited while Jason escorted Dr. Harper away. She clasped Eli's hand. "You did it," she said softly. He managed a small grin. "It wasn't just the music," she added. "It was your words, too." He nodded. Jason returned and held a small framed invitation card. They'd like him to visit their headquarters next month for a recording session. Nothing public. Eli's eyes widened. Maya turned to him. "Would you like to go?" He paused, then reached into his pocket and withdrew a minute drawing, a simple bow reaching up toward a stylized microphone. Underneath, he'd written, "Yes." Jason exhaled. "We'll arrange it together." That evening, Jason invited Maya for dinner at the club's rooftop lounge, not for business, but to share real stories between courses of grilled salmon and roasted vegetables. Jason reflected. "I thought therapy, schedules, plans, I thought those were paths to connection. But maybe connection grows from listening." Maya stirred her tea. "And from following someone without trying to lead them." Jason smiled softly. "You once told me he leads the way. I didn't fully believe it until today." Maya looked into the city lights beyond, cars like fireflies, window reflections flickering. "You're listening now," she said. "No," Jason said, taking her hand briefly, "because of you." They shook silent promises in that shared gesture. Inside, Eli fell asleep, curled on the couch, violin strapped by his side. Maya and Jason lingered nearby. "They asked us to write a foreword," Jason said, rummaging in his bag for Dr. Harper's pamphlet series, Music and Silence, Stories of Emerging Voices. He handed Maya a folded sheet. It read, "Asterisk to those silent souls who taught me that connection isn't earned by permission, but discovered when we stop speaking and start listening. JW**. Maya swallowed. She read quietly to herself, words that mirrored what Eli had taught all of them. She leaned forward and slipped an arm around Jason. Your words honor him. He nodded. And our journey. The next morning, Eli startled Maya awake with both arms wrapped around her. Dream, he whispered. You and me, we're under the stars. Maya smiled and traced a finger across his forehead. Then we'll go. She called Jason, who agreed to plan a trip to someplace quiet and remote, where Eli could play for himself under stars instead of spotlights. As they packed violin cases and sketchbooks for a weekend escape, Maya caught sight of the mural in their rearview mirror through the club's entrance. The colors seemed to glow gold in the morning sun. She looked at Eli and Jason in the back seat. They were leaning close, talking softly. She understood then that the real story wasn't what the world asked from them. It was what they gave to each other. And that choice, that silent, listening choice, would echo well beyond any note it inspired. That evening, Eli and Maya sat under the mural, watching the sun sink low behind the buildings. She held the letter he'd written, still folded neatly. I got an offer today, she said. Eli looked at her, curious. It's a school. They want to teach me more about helping kids like you. I'd still be here, but I'd have to take classes, too. Eli paused, then wrote something in his sketchbook, *, you don't need school. You helped me without it, *. Maya smiled, touched. Thank you. But learning doesn't mean I'm not enough. It means I want to be even better. Eli stared at her a moment, then slowly nodded. He turned to a new page and drew something quickly, a tiny stick figure with glasses and a giant book, beside a violin. Underneath, he wrote, You can be both. Maya laughed, wiping her eyes. Wise beyond your years. Jason stood near the doorway, watching the two of them without interrupting. He often did that now, observing, listening, learning, not as a CEO or a father trying to fix things, but as someone willing to witness without control. That night, Jason found himself unable to sleep. He walked through the club halls, ending up in the old wine room that Caroline had once wanted to turn into a music studio. Her piano sketch still hung on the wall, faded but intact. He sat down at the small bench she'd once used and whispered into the emptiness, He's okay. You'd be proud. Outside in the hallway, Maya passed by and heard him. She didn't knock. She didn't enter. She simply placed a hand on the wall, close enough to feel the echo of his grief, and let the silence say what neither of them could. The next morning, Jason and Maya told Eli about the award. He sat in his usual chair, twirling a pencil between his fingers. When they finished, he didn't react right away. Instead, he took out his sketchbook and scribbled a single word, together. Jason smiled. We'll be there. Eli grinned and reached for his violin. A new tune began, light, playful, unsure, but brave. And when the last note hung in the air, Maya whispered, I think that's what joy sounds like. They didn't need an audience or cameras or accolades. They only needed the music and each other. And the story, still unfolding, played on. Dawn broke softly over the quiet lakeside retreat Jason had chosen for the weekend. Thin mist curled above the water, and tall reeds swayed gently in the breeze. The air smelled like pine and possibility, far from city clamor and blinking lights. Eli was already awake, seated cross-legged on a wooden dock with his violin perched carefully on his shoulder. He drew cautious bow strokes, listening to the echoes ripple across the water. Maya sat beside him, sketchbook open but untouched, simply present. Jason watched from a few feet away, hands folded, witnessing without intrusion. Maya motioned to him. He settled on a weathered bench, coffee in hand. The landscape felt suspended, as if the world paused to honor this moment. Eli finished his piece, a short composition born of their quiet rituals, and slowly lowered his violin. His eyes traced ripples until they reached Maya. Then, quietly, Maya, he said again. She smiled. Jason folded his coffee paper cup and stood. The two of them resumed playing together. Their music drifted across the lake like a prayer carried on wind. A pair of loons called in the distance. Dragonflies danced above the water. Leaves shimmered bright in the early light. And for once, Eli's music was accompanied not by applause, but by nature's embrace. After the morning session, they walked to a small dockside cafe where tables overlooked the water. Jason ordered coffee and pulled a map from his jacket pocket. "They want us to speak at a symposium," he said. "Not to spotlight Eli, but to discuss the work you're doing with children like him." Maya leaned back. "As long as it's educational, as long as it's about listening, not spectacle." Jason nodded. "It's about policy, practice, how to create space for voices that haven't been heard." Eli sipped hot chocolate, quiet but attentive. Maya nudged him gently. He reached into his sketchbook and pulled out a drawing, a violin extending roots into the ground and branches reaching skyward, notes blossoming like leaves. Jason smiled. "That's beautiful. That's exactly what this could become." Mid-morning, the retreat director, Dr. Leland, a child therapist, invited them into a sunlit lodge room for an informal conversation with parents and therapists. The topic: silent voices, living sound, building bridges for neurodiverse children. Jason spoke first, voice steady. "We used to think progress came from structured plans. But I learned that it comes from space, patience, and knowing when to let go." He nodded toward Maya. "She didn't teach me how to parent. She taught me how to listen." Eli watched with shy pride. Maya followed. "When a child plays his own melody, it's not just music. It's identity. We don't need to fix those children. We need to find them and then step gently aside." Parents nodded, some wiping tears. Therapists leaned forward, scribbling notes. Then Eli approached the microphone. He stood barefoot, his voice small but firm. "Music made me known. Listening made me brave." Tears fell. Applause rose, not brash, but breaking through. Then he dropped the mic, walked back to Maya, wrapped his arms around her waist, and looked up at his father. Jason met his gaze. No need for words. In silence, they understood. His voice had arrived not just on paper, not just in private rooms, but in truth. That afternoon, as the sun lowered toward gold, they sat on a bench overlooking the lake. Eli lay between them, head against Jason's knee, violin case at his feet. Maya sipped tea. Jason cradled his son's hand. Eli's eyelids drooped. He fell asleep, curled into the rhythm of the day. Jason stroked his hair and whispered, "You found your song, boy." Maya laid a sketchbook beside them, open to a blank page. "We'll write another chapter," she said softly. Jason nodded. Together, they remained on that bench until twilight. Two adults and one boy, finding peace and stillness and hope beyond expectation. Outside, frogs began their chorus. Stars kindled overhead. The air hummed with the promise of what comes next. Because this story wasn't ending, not yet. It was only echoing forward. Asterisk: never underestimate the value of a person based on their job or the color of their skin. Patience, compassion, and true talent often come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes the quietest people make the loudest impact. This story reminds us that what truly matters is not wealth or status, but a heart that listens, understands, and uplifts others. Asterisk. Keep following Eli and Maya's incredible journey on Bup Stories. Subscribe now to never miss an update. Asterisk.